The haunting legends of a mighty Bigfoot have made man's blood run cold for centuries. Some terrific and some terrifying. The southern Appalachian Mountains whisper the mysteries of this strange and powerful creature through its smoky hills and ominous embrace. This is Brandon Thomas with Expanding Reality, elated to announce our very first Expanding Reality Excursions Befriending Bigfoot event. This is going to take place on a beautiful 27-acre ranch in Blairsville, Georgia, May 15th through the 20th. This intimate conference is going to feature Bigfoot adventure hikes in 3 different states, river kayaking, nightly presentations from such incredible presenters as Alexander Petikoff, Chris Matthew, Dave Zed, Preston Dennett, and many more. Also, we're going to be doing some UFO watching, some jam sessions, all kinds of hangouts. Visit expandingrealitypodcast.com/events for more information. That's expandingrealitypodcast.com/events. We'll see you there.
A choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a rock.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expanding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
Welcome to Expanding Reality. I am your host, Brandon Thomas. On this incredibly cool episode, crop circle expert and mental ninja Gary King drops by to talk about all things cool as shit. Now, Gary was back on the show, episode 16 back there in the archive, which will be located down below with Darcy Weir. Their film, Crop Circle Realities, is how I met Gary. Now, Gary's also joined us for A Frequency Theorist recently, and we go over other crop circles, so you're definitely going to want to check that out. That is linked down below. But all the ways to find Gary, as well as the show and everything else, linked down in the show description. Definitely also going to want to catch the Afterthoughts. Those are hosted over on Patreon. You can sign up to support your favorite show, and as a thank you, we give you these Afterthoughts at the end of these episodes here, as well as access to all of the other bonus content. Now, if you want to join us for the Hangouts, that's the next tier up there. You guys should absolutely hop on that thing, and I can get you the link before Saturday. We have one with Emily Trinkus, 3 to 5 p.m. Central. Going to be talking all things astrology, very topically relevant with the eclipse coming up on Monday. So everybody come join us, and I'll get you that link ASAP. Now, without any further ado, though, let's get to this incredibly cool conversation with Gary King. Gary King, it is so cool to see you, my friend, man. I recently had Trey Hudson on, and I misspoke on his episode. I had said his was 16, but actually his is 10. Your first time on the show was episode 16, my friend. That was back there 16. With Darcy Weir. That was over 3 years ago. That was with your Crop Circles Reality, the documentary that he made that you were in, and you guys were out here talking to us about it. And I fell in love with you on that conversation, dude. I was just like, my God, this guy is so fucking cool. And we just had an awesome time. So you also recently joined us for A Frequency Theorist, which will be linked down below. Those are hosted completely for free over on Patreon, guys. So go check that out. As well as your podcast, Curious Dimension, which I want to talk to you about, as well as your Facebook, Against the Grain, and all of the cool things. Also, you're going to stick around and join me for an Afterthought, which you guys can take advantage of in the link below by signing up for a Value Exchange audience. Gary, dude, it's so cool to see you, my friend. How's everything been going?
Good, but I've got to give you one correction. Curious Dimension is run by Matt Barone. That's his podcast out of Florida. Mine's just called Against the Grain, but it's not launching until the 1st of May.
Where did I find Curious Dimension from?
Well, you saw me give an interview on Curious Dimensions recently, probably on my Facebook page. That's okay, because you've given Matt Barone a plug. Against the Grain is mine. But it says the tagline is where curiosity leads the way. So maybe that's what fooled you.
Fucking hell. And it all blends together. I appreciate the on-the-fly correction here. Okay, well then, we're going to link him in that episode you were in just for shits and gigs.
It was a cool episode. Yeah, we had a good chat.
it's one of those synchronicity things too, that maybe some people will find that needed me to faux pas so you could correct, so we could link, so they could find. I'm going with it, brother. And I love you for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No worries.
Well,
no worries.
Against the Grain, then, you're amazing, because that's also the name of your Facebook group. So of course you'd name your podcast that. It makes sense. I
Everything,
like the
website,
vertical integration model. It's brilliant, man.
Thank you.
Okay, well then, how have you been?
I've been really good. It's my life. I say, oh God, my life is complex.
How are you handling that?
Last time we spoke, I was living in Mexico, right?
Yeah.
And so since then, I've come back to the UK. I've become a grandfather. I've spent the last 2 years doing engineering studies and learning what happens when vehicles are involved in road traffic accidents, and how the energy moves through the vehicle, how the safety systems worked, and all that sort of stuff. Which was a direction I never knew I was going to go in, but I've just gone with it, and it's been really interesting and quite rewarding to be working in a completely different field, not focused on this, which has been, as you know, my life since 1997, right through until I came back from Mexico, really, when I just spent the last couple of years just doing this sort of part-time and taking some time out just to kind of be a regular person, doing that sort of stuff. So it's been interesting.
The roads that you go down, I mean, metaphor into what you're doing now, but it's a fascinating ride here, and you're just along for it, man. But I love that along this ride since 97, and I hope that we revisit that story here this evening for everybody out there. Your life has changed in a very interesting direction. Crop circles have always fascinated me. There's just something about it. I'm an artist, so a lot of the things I do sort of look like crop circles in a way. And so I think there's something really deep that connects to us in a crop circle. So what do you think that is? What do you think that humanity is so drawn to, and why do you think that they occur in the first place? Is it for us to be drawn to?
Deep question, man. Okay, I mean, so let me flip to the last page then, right? Because it's better to start from there. Okay, we're talking about consciousness, all right? And so you work back from there and you say, okay, what's geometry got to do with consciousness? So Carl Jung's number one protege was a lady called Marie-Louise von Franz. And she said that number is the primary archetype. So we talk about the archetype of the mother and the father and the jester and so on and so forth as kind of like, these larger than life characters that we get to live in the shoes of in a way, right? So we play out the archetypes of these different characters, let's say, right? But number, which you think, what's number got to do with that, right? But number's the fabric of the universe. And we're not talking about really serious, complicated mathematics. We're talking about whole numbers, whole number ratios, and how relationships between numbers work. And as soon as you start thinking down those lines, the relationship, how do numbers play together? Some numbers don't play nicely together. Some numbers do. And you can see if they play nicely together by making a shape out of the number, which is geometry. Squares are 4 in space. A pentagram or pentagon is 5 in space. Yeah. Triangle's 3 in space. So those 3 points mark out an inside and an outside. And if you put 3s together, triangles together, you can realize that it works to go well with a 6, with a hexagon, because all those triangles will fit inside nicely with leaving no spaces, and there'll be a beautiful pattern. So 3s and 6s make sense, right? They work together. So when you start playing with these, playing with them is an operative word, actually, right? Because human beings are designed to play. We're supposed to play, and we learn from playing. We are wired from playing. I do a lot of martial arts, and I was watching this video recently where they were talking about the Cuban MMA team. And the martial arts I do is internal martial arts. And I'll come on to that in a minute because it's very related to everything I've done with the crop circles. But I was watching this video about the MMA, and they said that the trouble with like combat and fighting and competition is that, you know, if you get in the ring and you spar all the time, you can't take the beatings. You get injuries. Doctors and lawyers can't practice MMA or go and do it because they can't go back to work on a Monday with their face beaten up. So the Cuban team just started playing. And when you play, you don't have the stress, you don't have the tension, you don't have the fear which restricts you from learning whilst you're being creative, whilst you're trying to solve problems and move around, okay? And the Cuban team just adopted this and they won across the board. And so there's lots of psychological studies about play. And so when you play with geometry and you just start seeing what shapes work together, like a child that's just got these blocks on a carpet, you can see how these numbers will play with each other. Okay. So how does this work in consciousness? Right. When we look out into the world, we see things that are either harmonious and balanced or disharmonious. If we hear musical notes, we can hear notes that work, play together harmoniously, or notes that don't play nicely together. And we don't have to know the notes, what they are. We don't have to be musically trained. We just know if someone plays a bum note in a chord, it goes duh, and it doesn't work. It's a bad relationship. So we're wired to understand good relationships and bad relationships without even knowing we know it. We know it from as soon as we come into this world. And so those relationships are based on whole number ratios. So when you hear, let's say that you take a top string of a guitar, you pluck it, you will hear an E note. And again, you don't have to know if it's an E note. You hear the note, you hear the tone. If somebody then puts their finger at the halfway point of that string and divides it exactly by half, which is a 2-to-1 ratio, you pluck it again, you hear an octave higher. You hear the same note, but different. As the Thai people say, same, but different. So immediately you realize, well, Pythagoras was the myth that Pythagoras is that he went past the blacksmith's office and he heard these two tones and he asked the guy, why am I hearing it? He said, I've got a 6-pound hammer and a 12-pound hammer. And he went, ah. So he went home and he got into his laboratory and he started, filling glass bottles with water with different ratios, tapping them with a spoon and hearing the notes, right? Different lengths of string. It all works, whole number ratios. So, okay. So we hear that and we're wired for it. So there's something going on in consciousness then that fits with the outside world. Our internal world meets the outside world, and it comes together. It makes a connection, right? And it's a harmonious one. It's a good relationship. So the other, we have these 5 senses, as you know, these 5 slits in our body that look at and receive data from the world. And I heard on a Sam Harris podcast recently where they said, well, once light hits the eyes, once it goes in, it becomes a completely different thing. From that moment on, something else is taking place with the brain and its interpretation of what we're seeing and so on and so forth. Right? So reality happens as soon as things go in the eyes. Okay, so the Gothic builders, let's say, the churches in this country, there's lots of other examples, go back to the pyramids, but let's start with the churches. What they did was build these churches using the same whole number relationships, same whole number ratios. So, for example, they'd have a window that had a circular element to it within the arch that was 10 feet wide, and the circle above it would be exactly 5 feet in diameter. So when you look at the building, all the building will have the same proportions, the roof to the walls and the buttresses. And then when you walk inside, the aisle will be 4-to-1 of the altar. Things like this, right? Again, all musical ratios. So when we go in there, not only does music sound good, but when we look back at when we look at the building, something speaks to our intuition, just like the music does. It bypasses the intellect and it says, this is right. It feels right. Okay. And it feels right because they're using exactly the same numbers that are wired into the creation itself, the creation that we occupy. So a good relationship happens. So the Freemasons and the Masons who built the ancient Egypt and so on, wherever this knowledge began and where it came from, we can discuss that till the cows come home. It doesn't matter. The fact is that those numbers and those ratios speak to us at the deepest level of our being. because paradoxically, the deepest level of our being is like the furthest reaches of the universe. When you go in on itself, it's this toroidal. So this is self-knowledge. This is gnosis, isn't it? This is this. The Essenes were practicing this. People who were searching for the answers to what's the meaning of life out there were finding that, the more you go in, the more you go out, and vice versa, and so on. And so geometry then speaks to this. Long-winded answer, crop circles, right? They are speaking to us in this language, the primal language of exactly who we are and what the universe is. So I met some really groovy guys when I first encountered the crop circles, fortunately for me, who were master geometers. And I got the privilege to work and run a website with Professor Michael Glickman, who they all learnt from somebody called John Michel, and Professor Keith Critchlow, who runs the Prince of Wales, now the King Charles, School of Islamic Arts in London. And a man called John Martineau discovered some hidden implicit geometry inside crop circles that had all these numbers, that had these 5 and 8s in them. And I'll tell you a little bit about those numbers in a minute, just to tempt, lay out the tempt for your listeners. So when he discovered this, he went to John Michel was his Greek tutor at Oxford. So John Martineau went to John Michel and said, am I going mad? Have I got this? And John Michel took a place and a look at it and said, no, you're on something, and recommended that John go to Professor Keith Critchlow and spend 2 years writing a master's thesis on what he discovered from the crop circle. And it's this amazing work that shows that basically all the planets that surround us, and they're all the relationships between them in terms of their relative sizes or their relative distances, space from each other, are all whole number ratios, just like a musical scale, right? So the part of the solar system that we occupy is this harmony of the spheres that's going around like a musical instrument. And the numbers are 99.9% accurate. He did it on a master's thesis. It's just such profound knowledge, really, because it just shows that we don't have to be Professor Stephen Hawking level mathematicians and to understand number. These are just kids' numbers. It's like something's playing with us in a way. And we don't have to talk about the author, right? The author obviously wants to stay mysterious, right? So just let them be mysterious. But what they're talking about, to answer your question, is speaking about the most profound questions that humankind has.
Gary King, man, it's just good to see you, dude. It's an answer like that, man. Guys, all the ways again to find him located down in the show description. Go find this guy. Go listen to his amazing show, Against the Grain. Outstanding answer, brother. And that's the truth of it, right? You look at this and you're not obsessed over the authors, which is even more fascinating. I love this. Like you want to see the results of the wind on the trees, but not necessarily the wind itself. It's very interesting. Your just approach to this, man. And what do you feel you felt going into crop circles when you initially had your experience in 97, which if you don't mind, let's just start from there for the audience here. From that experience, how has your perception shifted, and in what way has it redirected? Like, what made you feel the way you do about it now, to where you weren't obsessed over who was making them, but what they were saying?
Wow, yeah, that could probably be another long answer. So I first encountered the crop circles in 1997, and I was going through a life change, right? I used to be a lawyer, and I had a nervous breakdown. My marriage was on the rocks, and, the usual stuff that happens to many, many people. I was going through that period in my life. And it was at that time that a bunch of coincidences happened, and I ended up with an American man who was over from Iowa. I ended up doing a sweat lodge with them and found out that this guy was visiting the crop circles. And I'd heard about the crop circles on some news articles years before, and my life was just full on in another direction then. So it was like kind of glance, and it stayed in my memory a bit, but But I said to this guy sort of like, I'd had some profound experiences around him with the sweat, just after the sweat lodge and during the sweat lodge. And so I tracked him down to sort of say like, what's going on with me? I'm having some profound experiences as a result of doing that sweat lodge. And I was looking for answers, and I didn't really get very many off of him. And so, but then I found out that he was going to the crop circles, and I said, I'd like to see the crop circles. Can I come with you? And he called me up a few weeks later, and we went to Wiltshire. It was about the 11th of July, 1997. We drove into what is the hub, the center point of where the crop circles seem to emanate nowadays. The most prolific places in a place called Alton Barnes. And as we drove over the hill, in between the breasts and the pregnant belly of the mother goddess, this road that goes through the middle of it over this hill, there was a crop circle, a Taurus knot in the field opposite. And I said, "Is that a crop circle?" And he said, "Stop the car." And we stopped the car. And this guy was a shaman, right? And I spent the next 10 years with him, having the most profound experiences of my life with the teachings that he took me through. And so on that day, I saw this crop circle, and we stopped, and he got out of the car, and he rattled this rattle, and he sung this Indian Native American chant and done some sort of stuff. And then we drove down and we walked in it. And from the moment I walked in, I'd done a lot of qigong and a lot of martial arts from when I was really young. When I was 16, I practiced this Indonesian art called Kateda, and we did a lot of qi and central power. And so in 1982, these were the early days of when information from the East was filtering into the West that was a bit more esoteric, like breaking bricks on your stomach and breaking bricks with your feet and doing this in and power and meditation. I was doing that at 16. And so I actually had a sensitivity to feeling energy, which I'd forgotten about because I'd gone off to be rich and, and sort of left that life behind from when I was 20 and spent 10 years, punching my guts out trying to get rich and famous as a lawyer, or not as a lawyer, but just successful. And now I'm back, sort of like walking into this crop circle, and I feel this tingling that takes me back to those martial art days, And this teacher of mine, he had this. He looked like Paul Newman. He had this white hair, and he had these big blue eyes, and he'd look at you and twinkle. The eyes would twinkle, There's. And he took me over and he laid me down at an intersection. And before that, he said to me, it was weird because I felt the energy as I went in. And just before that, he looked at me and said, "Have you ever done any qigong?" He didn't know I had done it. And I said, "Actually, yeah." And he went, "Okay, do this." And he gave me this qigong exercise. And then he took me over to this intersection and he laid me down in this intersection. And I closed my eyes and immediately fell into a dreaming state, where I just saw all this wheat go like a breath was being blown through it, and it all laid down really fast, and it all had order, with that one laying down and that one laying over it and so on. I just saw it in my mind for what felt like a second, and I just opened my eyes quickly, and this guy's eyes were looking at me with this big smile on his face, and I went, "It goes down really quickly," and he just smiled, and that was it, man. I was screwed. I was hooked, and I knew something was going on. And that's when I obviously then started to get educated about what was going on down there, and the whole story with Doug and Dave who make them. And there's these people who say they make them, and it's a big joke. And then there's this other lot of people who say it's. And he told me to stay away from everybody for 10 years. He said, "Stay away from everybody. If you get involved in any groups or get too close to any people, you won't be able to ground the experiences for yourself and hold them tight so you can hold on to them." He said, "You just, people will take it away from you in a way. It's like you've not got the power grounded. You're like the coyote that's just run off the cliff, and you think the ground's there, but you get me? So the ground's just been taken away from you, and you're very vulnerable and naive. And so that's the spiritual journey, right? Everybody goes through it. And at that moment, there's every guru in the world who's there to give you the answers to what you're experiencing. And it's not a good idea to take those answers, right? You need to figure it out for yourself. And so he gave me the best advice ever. He said, stay away from everyone for 10 years. Keep visiting the crop circles every year. Keep coming in. And he showed me to do different things, approach the crop circles from a different direction that everybody else was going in, not go in straight away and rush into it, to pay attention to what happens before, during, and after the visit. Don't just think about what you're seeing inside. Don't go. Lots of things that were based on the psychedelic experience, really. The way you approach meeting a plant is the way you approach meeting a crop circle. That's how he taught me. You get me?
Makes sense, because it's plants.
Exactly. And so that was what I would do, right? I would, everybody would be getting out of their cars and taking the quickest route into the crop circle, and I'd bloody walk round the outside of the field and come in from another direction, and then I'd empty my mind. I'd walk in, and one of the things that happens, particularly when you're well known now, like in crop circles, is that people come straight over to you to talk to you. And it's not a good idea. You're just walking into potentially a miracle. You don't want to be chatting about, like, if someone would come over to go, have you seen the chemtrails? You go, well, I'm interested, but I'm here right now.
It's the same in an ayahuasca ceremony. Those are very solo and on your own. Even if you're in a group of people, you don't really connect and interact. Yeah. Right. Very interesting. There is a lot of synonymy in it.
Yeah. So that's how I was taught, really. And for 10 years, I would go and do the things this guy taught me to do, to go to the crop circles, and lots of crazy stuff happened to me. I'd wake up at 3 a.m, in Cardiff. I lived in Cardiff, 70 miles away. There'd be a couple of occasions where I wake up at 3 a.m. I'd just sit up in my bed and go, I'll go to Wiltshire. And I'd drive to Wiltshire and I'd walk into Eastfield, and there'd be 2,000-foot long crop circles that appeared in the same field just next to each other that night. One of a big snake and another one of a big pictogram. And I'd be there at first light. Stuff like that happened. And it was just like, well, it's wild, man. So yeah, that was the early days up until 2007. And then 2007, I had my own experience with a crop circle appearing in front of me. And that's when I got sort of worldwide attention, started to get an interview. But that was the 10 years, right? I had my 10 years. And so I was ready to go on the next chapter.
It's just fascinating. Will you do me a favor and go over with the audience the area in which this happens and where else in the world crop circles happen, and what's the radius area of where this does occur in the UK?
So in the UK, they've happened in lots of places around the UK, but they seem to be centered around, well, they are centered around Wiltshire. It's the county of Wiltshire. It's like 1,300 square miles. It's the biggest military area. It's where the military industrial, might of the British Army exists. The Salisbury Plain Manoeuvre Ground is there. It's where they practice, tanks and missiles and guns and helicopters. And in the summer, you go there, you're going to see lots of military helicopters flying around. You're going to hear tanks firing at night. You're going to see flares going up in the air. You're going to see all sorts of stuff, because in the middle of all this farmland, there is this military presence, right? And there's military bases all around. So you've got this kind of interesting place where food is made, and you've got Stonehenge, and you've got Avebury, and you've got the mystery of the past, right, with these ancient Neolithic monuments, all in the same place. You've got Salisbury Cathedral. This area was actually where the first amount of trees were felled to start farming. So it's a very important place for humans in the British Isles, where we moved from hunter gatherers, where we moved around in a circle with the seasons and stopped and started to grow crops, right? So it's quite an important, like, if there was a context, which there obviously always is, context is everything in a communication. The context of the communication in the crop circles is the location, right? And so Alton Barnes is this, and there's this, so there's a lot of evidence that's been accumulated by really clever people like Robin Heath, who's found the first proto-Stonehenge in Wales, and the Druids from Wales, who, these mystical sort of bards, played music and sang songs, and they were the retainers of the oral histories, the knowledge, because before writing was invented, all accumulated knowledge had to be passed down orally, and it had to be done in a way that was storied, because we remember stories. We don't remember just reading, facts and data. We're not wired for that. We're wired for stories. So stories that were played to music, you can hear a song that you haven't heard for 20 years, right? And you're going to remember those words as soon as you hear that tune.
Dude, it's crazy. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
So the bards were the same as these as the way I see the Australian Aborigines, right? The 60,000-year-old culture. You know, they've got these song lines where the way that they move around this vast area and know where they're going and know where to get food and know where to get water and survive and live is because they get taught these songs by their grandmothers, right? And the songs are mapped because all the landscape is named. The hills have got names. Well, Wiltshire, this area, is the same. Knapp Hill, Milk Hill, Martinsell Hill, Golden Ball Hill. It goes on and on. And so there's this Ridgeway path that's 6,000 years old, right? And it seems that, you know, the bards would come down from Wales and they knew that, like the Egyptians were able to figure out the circumference of the earth, and so were other cultures, because of simple things that, you know, you can look at Robert Grant and Scott Onstott's work to show how they did it. These bards obviously knew that this place was an important location where they were going to build these stone circles and so on. And so they would have walked down this path, and they would have been singing to know where they were going, because the hills are named as you're singing the song. You're looking to your right and left, and the hills that have got those names are to your left and right, so you know you're in the right place, right?
That's so cool.
Yeah. So you know, it's an area where I never knew any of this stuff, right? I only know this stuff because I went and visited some geometry in the crop. And I go, oh, where is this place? I started asking different questions other than, is it two old guys? Do you think this one's real? You can't stay around for 27 years if you keep asking that question.
There you go.
And people wonder why I shake my head when they ask me, do you think that one was real? I go, oh, fuck, man. Simple answer, right? There's been 7,000 crop circles. Let's get 7,000 photos laid out on the table, right? We'll go through them one by one, and we'll say, would you think that one's real? Yeah, that one's too big. It's too right. We'll put that one over there. Think no, don't know. Put that in the maybe pile. Put that one in. Put that one in a definitely man-made pile. You've got 3 piles of photographs in front of you. Right, let's get rid of the maybes. Let's get rid of the man-mades. Let's talk about them. No one wants to do it.
It'd be great of you to do this, sort of like a Project Green Book, right? Like Project Blue Book, right? They just reviewed the cases. They had a classification system. They had some identified, some unidentified, or some inconclusive, right? The RUFO, the residual UFO cases. So you could have residual crop circles that you can just focus on those to have people shut up. I agree with you, though, that it's not worth your time to do that. You just focus on the ones that you like, move on with what you know, and the people that need it proved, they're going to need to prove it to themselves.
Let them do it. Yeah. But I'm not interested to do that. I wouldn't have that. As soon as I feel that, you know, like the suggestion, it's been suggested to me many times, Jaime Maussan wanted me to do it on the show. Let me put a star classification on it. I was like, no way. And he's like, oh, you know, he couldn't understand why I didn't want to do it, because I have to go with what my passion is with this. The thing that, you know, I don't have to think it's work, it's play. I love it. I'm curious. I need to know. As much as I'd love people to know the magic that I've felt from the crop circles and see, as much as I'd like people to experience that with all my heart. Okay. But I can't prove it to them. I wish I could. I can't. I can just say to you, look, here's the stuff. Look at it for yourself.
What's the time of year in which this happens? Is there a time frame, or is it year round?
Well, when the crops come up, so they start in about April, about coming up in the next month now, in the next 3-4 weeks, just after Easter, right? The canola comes up, and so the canola is the first crop. You know, we've had crop circles on the 8th of April, and we've had like 20 crop circles by the end of April. Some seasons.
So it's every year consistently since they've been recorded?
Since they've been recorded. In the last 10 years, numbers have gone down.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. You know, one of the things that I thought was so fascinating was when you talked about the crop circles, the residual of them will last even past when the crop has been harvested. And this was on our first episode. I remember this from 3 years ago when you said it. It still blows my mind that crop circles that were formed in, let's say, April, will stay there after the crops have been harvested, and then snow will fall, but snow will be outside of that area and not settle into where that crop circle was and leave it as an outline, even when another crop circle comes up over top of it and then gets mowed. The other one behind it, almost like overlaid hieroglyphics, will sort of be an imprint in the just mud right there. That's fascinating.
If you go to my Against the Grain YouTube channel, I wrote and produced a small piece for Mexican television called Ghost Circles. It's in Spanish, but there's good captions. You can English captions at the bottom you can read. But there's lots of photos of ghost crop circles next to crop circles. So there's a ghost crop circle from 1 year, and then next to it, just in the field, is this year's crop circle, and you can see the ghost, of this huge crop circles. Yeah, there's obviously I researched it because I was curious, and there are some plausible explanations for it. So when people visit crop circles, they knock the heads of the seeds off and they all fall to the ground. And so a couple of weeks later, you can see the grass, the wheat grass, coming back up, right? Now, so the crop circle, if it's not going to be harvested for 3 or 4 weeks, all the floor of it will have this grass all over it because it's germinated, right? But then the farmer will come along and harvest the field, and that wheat grass won't have enough time to mature, but it will have laid down a root net under the ground. Now, fields aren't ploughed anymore, right? It's not cost effective. So the farmer uses these machines that drill seeds into the ground. So the following year, they'll rotate the crop and put canola in, or some other crop, right? Canola's got a bigger seed. The seed drill will push it through the roots that were created by the wheat that was dropped last year, so that the seeds underneath that root mat. And then some of those seeds are going to have trouble getting through the root mat. So then you see the ghost. You get me?
No, I totally get you. And I love that it's such a great answer and it makes so much sense, but also you're not just reaching for freaky woo-woo. You're like, actually, there's a really plausible answer here, and it makes the most sense in the world. When it's cool, and you'll call it cool. But also, that's fascinating, dude. Yeah.
The way to keep your head with all of this, if you want to, some people want the woo-woo, obviously, and we all mysterious, but if you want to stay in this for any given time or really play, you've got to say, right, this is what I know. And I can show data to say that this is, overwhelmingly. I always loved that when I was at university, I lived in this house, room in this house, big house where the landlord lived out the back, and he was a PhD biochemist and a psychologist, right? He was writing a book on the biological basis of consciousness, his theories, right? He was a good sparring partner because he was not woo-woo in any way, and he made me way more disciplined in my arguments, because whereas you can easily dismiss stuff off to the woo-woo, you wouldn't get past this guy. No way. Not a PhD biochemist who's got he did a psychology degree in Cardiff in 2 years, right? Because he just had these theories about consciousness. And so this was a driven guy. And so he really sharpened my skills and he taught me, a theory is a bag of water. And what you do with that theory is you attack it from every angle. And the more it holds water, the more likely it is to be true. Doesn't mean it is true. And if you don't hold on to any certainties that you're not really certain about, you don't go to war with anybody because you're not really sure. You only go to war with people when you're certain. So it's peace, man. Just know what you know what you're speculating about, and know what you don't know if you can. Right, I have no idea about that. And you can keep your feet on the ground a bit better.
It's amazing. Literally grounding, right? Because there's plenty of cool things to look at here, but also I love the fact that you're doing such research in a way that you can rule out pretty much anything at that point, right? Because you're at least covering bases. And even when you get to that point, you still know that it's only where you're at now, and that when something new comes along, you may change your perspective on it.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Jean-Luc Picard said in Star Trek: New Generation, I have to be ready to reconsider my convictions at any given moment.
That's it, and that's what I've been screaming for a while now: is temporary truths. I think that's the only real thing here, is that you're temporarily very certain of something, and then if you allow it, it'll change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. God, this is cool. Okay, so I am very curious about whenever crop circles form and appear, there's a time period throughout its, I guess, stay throughout a season. Now, do you feel that these are in any chronological order? Are they telling a story? Do you think that they are from the same authors, or one author trying to contradict the other? Do you think that it's messages almost like messages that we're intercepting between two races, or do you feel like it's an intelligence that's really teaching us something?
Last thing, intelligence is teaching us something. I don't go much further than that. It is another intelligence, and in my view, a high intelligence. And I think I've got good evidence for that. Yes, I do feel that there are differences, qualitative differences between certain groups of crop circles. Almost like you're walking around a gallery and you're feeling a Picasso and you're feeling a Da Vinci and
exactly.
You're feeling
yeah.
And even sometimes the apprentices, and that's where the man-made, it could be, I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Could be somebody new at it. They're just learning.
It's exactly. You just don't. And it's the not knowing that you've got to learn to handle. Because we've all been taught that you've got to get an answer and then you can move on. I'll never forget when I was at university. I went back to university when I was 40, and I became the student rep to a load of 19-year-olds. So I was the sort of intermediary between the lecturers and the first essay assignment. These 19-year-olds were coming up to me, and they'd been through their A levels and all that, and they were saying to me, what do they want us to say? And I was like, What you want the answer? Yeah. They just wanted the answer so they could write it and then pass. And I was like, you got to change your thinking, guys. This is not about answers, right? You got to go and read this guy who says this, and then read this guy who says the opposite. And then in your essay, you've got to show that you've read this guy by, citing him and making out you understand his argument, and then citing this guy, and then discuss what you think is the flaws in each of their arguments in the middle and what you think. And I go, what do you mean what I think? I went, that's it. Do you know what I mean? You're in university now. University.
The universe. Yeah.
Universe, right? There's the square mortarboard.
Saturn.
That you wear. No, it's a square and a circle.
Oh, well,
circle of the head, right? Underneath, and a square right?
Yeah.
I agree.
Square in the circle. I like it because it is one of the most challenging things. Square in the circle. It's a mark of high achievement education.
Yeah, you can look back at Chinese scholars. They wore the square mortarboard, and it's passed down through university. It's square in a circle, which is a big thing in crop circles, as you know. So,
yes.
So there's a way of looking at knowledge, isn't there? There's a way of deciding. How do I look at this? How do I think about that? All right, so you look at the different types of crop circles, and over the years, I think I credit myself with this. I'm the only one that categorized them. And so the first category of crop circles is obviously geometry. That's what people think about. We've discussed that, right? What it is, it's number in space. The second category is religious and philosophical symbols. So we've had the Christ of Cross, we've had the face of Jesus in two crop circles that when you picked up the circles and laid them over each other, they created the Turin Shroud. Both appeared on the same day across the highway, right? And they're just strings of circles that mean nothing. They look abstract. It's only when you pick them up, a researcher from Germany, Andreas Müller, picked them up and, took the pictures from each side of the road. And they're big, honestly. I'll find you the pictures if you like. And he pulled them out like that in a graphics program and laid them over each other. Face of Jesus in the Turin Shroud comes out, right? The yin yang symbol, the wings of Horus, the tree of life and the Kabbalah, the Jewish menorah. There are lots of symbols that humanity has created when specifically trying to wrestle with the universe or the cosmology or the meaning of life, right? So our attention with geometry and philosophical and religious symbols is definitely drawn towards our search, our inquiries into what the fuck are we doing here? What is this place? Right?
Right. And it's interesting too, the depictions of religious characters and features, because then you've got the gray as well, that Arecibo the Arecibo crop circle, but as well, you've got the one with the digital graph, and it has the circles. We're going to pull some of this stuff in the afterthought, do some visuals and stuff. But you know what I'm talking about? And then it depicts a gray alien, or what is called a gray alien. People say that those are demonic in nature. One perspective of those is demons. So now they've got Jesus and demons in it. It's sort of interesting that dichotomy is depicted in these crop circles.
Right. There's loads. And that's, you see, that's the thing, right? So right there, you could have a bunch of people that start fighting with each other over that. And that's not the answer.
Yeah. It just sort of represents that it's all here.
Yeah, it's all here. So okay, let's stop. Let's not join one camp, the Jesus camp or the alien camp, and say, right, my way's right, because you get nowhere. You got in my humble opinion, you have to step back from that and say, okay, look, we need to try and look at this in a different way, where these things are both appearing and they might not mean what you immediately jump on them to mean. So let's hover a little bit in the air of the unknown and just acknowledge that they're there together, and maybe there's something else that will fit the jigsaw puzzle together later on. So we'll just not fight each other in the meantime, right? And then you can get somewhere. But unfortunately, these camps emerge very quickly between people because somebody wants to, for whatever reason, the UFO hunters will want to say that all the crop circles are coming from aliens, because it may be, if there's good evidence that comes out in a crop circle, then they can go, see, we were right. And then the Mayans and the people that have got various prophecies, they were definitely buzzing around before 2012 saying, this crop circle means this, that, and the other, and that means we were right. There's lots of that, you see that along the way, and that's all part of, the experience of it, right? That I've sort of come across over the years. So the third category is animals, birds and insects and dragonflies, butterflies, ants and spiders and fish, stuff like that, right? Some nature.
And that sort of reminds you of, the geoglyphs. Ugh.
Right. In Nazca.
Nazca. Thank you.
We've had the hummingbird. We've had a hummingbird. It looks really close, really, really close to the Nazca hummingbird.
Wow.
We've had one, and it was beautiful. I went in it several times.
Because crop circles inherently only appear here in Wiltshire, right? There's nowhere else on the planet.
Yeah. No, they do. Oh, yeah, they're everywhere. So the centre, I didn't go on to that earlier on when you were questions, but yes, so Wiltshire's the centre. They go across into a border into other counties in England called Gloucestershire and Hampshire, which are neighbouring. They've been in Wales. There've been one or two, which is across to the west. There've been some up north. There've been some as far as Worcestershire and even up to Northumberland. There've been crop circles, right? But dotted.
But not in Mexico, for instance.
There have been crop circles in Mexico. Yeah, really? I reported on several. Yeah, several went in Mexico. Brazil, there have been lots of crop circles. What we found over the years, and now we're going to jump into woo-woo land, right, is that people have come, you've heard of the hitchhiker thing from UFO fields, right? So people come from Germany to visit the crop circles, go back to Germany, and then the next year crop circles start appearing.
Yes.
And they appear near ancient monuments. They try and pick seemingly similar locations in those areas. So
do you think people are visiting here and then taking the phenomena of crop circles back to their local ancient sites?
I'm never going to take any scientists along with me if I say yes, right? But there's too many of us that have said, yeah, do you think that might? And they go, yeah, it seems to be.
Well, it's kind of like taking something from a ghost town and then getting home and then getting haunted. I hear there's this one ghost town in California that they say people go out and they take little rocks or bottle caps or something, a glass bottle or something. They go home and then they get haunted to shit. And then they'll mail that thing back to the ghost town and say, hey, we're so sorry. Tell the ghost, hey, apologies, for messing with this stuff. But it's also interesting that it just sort of is a residual phenomena that will just follow somebody home like a ghost or a spirit or anything else.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So then you could rule out latitude or longitude, correlation, right?
Yeah, I mean there was some great scientific work done by Glenn Broughton. He published an article in one of the magazines, Circular magazines. So this area is all on chalk. Okay, I'll go a bit sciencey on you now. Get away from the woo woo a bit. So
mix it all in together, man.
Mix it all in, man. So the area is all. If you pull back the soil, the reason that there's, you've seen the white horses, haven't you, around this area in Wiltshire, right? So on the hills there are about, I don't know, 8 or 9 or 10 white horses. One of them goes back to like 1700s. Some of them are modern ones that were done for the millennium, but the others are sort of 1700, 300 years ago. The people at the time carved away the soil and made these white horses that emblazon out in the landscape. As you're driving along, you see them.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and crop circles like to appear around them.
Do they become white like that? Do the crop circles ever get deep enough to become white?
No,
or do they're
just laying the crop over. Yeah, but the ground under it. So you've got the soil on top of that, and then underneath that's the chalk, right? Now the chalk that your teacher would write on the blackboard with, that's got all these tunnels and caves that, the underwater aquifers. So when the water goes underground and rolls under the ground, it's going through all these caves and aquifers, right, that are made out of the chalk. And so one of the scientific examinations that was done on crop circles in the early days with people in America, BLT research for Dr. W.C. Levengood, was they took soil and wheat samples, and they found that the plants had been affected by electricity. The soil showed evidence of magnetism because of the little iron spheres, and microwaves. Okay, 3 terrestrial energies are present inside the crop. And samples have been taken from lots of crop circles outside, control samples, and sent to America and analysed and so on. And so electricity, if you've got a water table, the water is this far under the ground. There's the surface of the ground where the crop is here, right? And if the water's up here, the water table, as they call it, is high, it's there. And as the water table goes down in the summer, gets lower, the electric potential between it provides a piezoelectric charge, right? So it could be that whatever's creating the crop surface is tapping into this energy source that's already there to make the wheat lay over.
Do these peak in about midsummer?
Yeah. They'll go through. So from April and through, the corn, the maize will be there until September, and you can have them in maize as well. So theoretically, you can go from April until September, sometimes even early October, depending on the weather, to have crop circles. But the peak of them are usually June and July and August.
Yeah,
they sort of end.
When there's the most kinetic potential in the water table below for there to be an expendable amount of electricity.
Yeah.
Wow.
But then, there's other stories where the crop circle that appeared in front of me in Eastfield, this same field, that was found to have plasma energy, and plasma exists at sort of 80,000 feet. It's this highly charged fourth state of matter where the electrons are so highly charged, they're away from the nucleus and they're just fuzzing around and creating plasma. That's been found to have affected the crop in the crop circle that appeared in front of me, which is explain the biological feature experiences we had with headaches and static electricity and stuff when we walked around in it at first light. So it seems that there's some sources of energy available to whatever's doing it to tap into that's already here.
Has a crop circle ever happened while somebody was standing in the field?
No, but so on the 8th of the 8th of the 8th, 8th of August 2008, I took 200 people up onto these hills, Milk Hill and Knapp Hill, and we did a big night watch to see if a crop circle had appeared in the fields underneath us, right? And the year before, on the 7th of the 7th of the 7th, is when the crop circle appeared in front of me and my girlfriend and this cameraman, right? So 777, everybody wrote to me over the year, you're going to do something on the 888? So I said, all right, well, let's just do a big one, right? It ended up, it was like a mini festival. We had people playing drums and someone selling chai, and a big dome got put up. And, it's like, it was great. Following morning, first light, a huge eight formation with, I don't know, 200 and odd circles, individual circles. You find it, look up the 888 crop circle. It's amazing. It's in a documentary that I've just made with Darcy, the footage of it, because Jaime was over that week. And afterwards, some friends of a friend who comes over from the States spoke to this couple who walked in that field. We knew these people. They walked in that field in the early hours of the morning, they felt drawn to walk in it, and something seriously powerful came into their heads and said, "Get out," and they ran.
Damn, so no one can be present there, or something will run you off if they're about to drop a crop circle.
Seems so. I mean, we were close by when that one appeared in front of us, and there was just this big burst of white light. It just went this big everywhere.
Did you feel any pressure wave or sound?
No, just light. Just a big, like it's flash. 4 milliseconds it lasted because we had 2 cameras on that monitored it.
No additional wind or breeze or anything from all the wheat being laid down?
No, we were on the hill, and the field's way down in the valley below us, so, a few hundred feet down. So, we didn't hear any rustling or the winds, blowing about because you're on top of a hill anyway. So all we saw was like we were sitting on the grass, and for that split second, I could see the grass, and because there's no lights, no street lights around that area. It's farms, right? It's it's dark, especially if it's cloudy. If the moon's out, you got some light, but if it's cloudy, which it was, there's no light.
Wow. Does weather affect crop circles? If it's raining really hard, do they just not show up, or if there's a bad storm or something like that?
So in 2001, the biggest crop circle consisting of 409 circles appeared on Milk Hill, which is the hill opposite that hill one I'm talking about. One of the biggest crop circles ever, one of the most impressive. And that night it rained so hard you would not believe it. If you put your windscreen wipers on the car that night and you drove, even on fast speed, weren't enough. And in the morning, when we went in it, right, at first light, the clouds were so low that you were in the clouds on the top of this hill. And so when you walked into it, it was eerie, man. Honestly, God, it was eerie. Because you could, there's 409 circles, but if you stood in one of them, you're lucky if you see 2 more in front of you and 2 more to the side of you. That's it. Because it goes over the side. It's like looking over the side of a football. It goes down the hill. It's not on this flat ground. So you can't see much of it, right? And then this mist's all around it. And when you shouted to a friend, the mist absorbed the sound of your voice. So you could shout at the top of your voice, and your voice wouldn't go farther than there.
Yeah, like
so it's in this ethereal feeling inside this crop circle. I'll never forget it.
God, you brought us there, man. That feels incredible. It sounds amazing and eerie. Wow.
Yeah.
What and then it, of course, then, I mean, we don't have to point it out, but we might as well, that it points out that probably a human didn't do that. Some guy with boards wasn't out there in the middle of the night doing
people
that.
Claim they did. People claim they did without any evidence, of course. But, that's the thing, isn't it?
You've also talked about some amazing geometry that shows up that where if the landscape undulates, like what you're talking about, the crop will alter itself so where the pattern above reveals completely level and even and straight, even though the ground isn't.
Yeah, so if you ask a surveyor, so if you've got undulating land, 95%, 99% of it around that area is undulating, right? There's very few flat fields. There are flat fields, but they're the minority, really. They're either going down on a slope or they're undulating, or mostly undulating. So if you speak to a surveyor, right, and you say, right, okay, I want to draw a circle. So I used to say this as an exercise. I used to say to people, right, okay, take a sheet of paper and draw a circle on it perfectly, right? Draw a perfect circle. Okay. Now take a sheet of paper and put it on a surface like that and draw a circle. And you realize it doesn't work, right? So I say, now take a sheet of paper, put it on a piece of on a surface like that, turn all the lights off, and draw a circle. So it's totally in the dark, right? That was just for fun.
It's like that, and without damaging the crop to where it's still harvestable and still usable and nothing's dead.
People walk in them, and that's what damages the crop afterwards. Right. But yeah, to answer your point, right? So that circle on the ground, on the undulating ground, has to be an oval. It has to be egg-shaped on the ground. So when you measure the diameter, you'll get like 160 feet, let's say, on one diameter, and then 140 on the other. So it's oval. Man, if you've got 409 circles all perfectly and all of different sizes next to each other going in a big curve, and they're not really circles, they're ovals, and they appeared in the rain in 5 hours of darkness, you got problems, man. You got real problems.
It's just such a great way to phrase it. I mean, when you put it like that, yeah. But I just thought that was fascinating that they do alter the shape and make them ovals to appear as circles if the ground isn't consistent.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people think, it's easy to make, because when you see them from above, they just look like they're on a postcard. That's the thing. if you have the experience of being in it, and I used to do this, I used to take people to crop circles and I'd say, we'll take them inside, and I wouldn't show them the overhead. And I'd say to them, okay, what do you think you're in? And they go, I've got no idea. This is like a labyrinth. You go, yeah, right. Okay, here's a picture. And they go, what? You always get that reaction. It's amazing.
So cool. Yeah. Are you ever able to tell what they are from the ground without seeing a picture above? Have you ever been able to go in one, draw it, and then compare it to the picture before you saw it?
No, not me. Some people, I never really tried that much, but some people did. I used to walk around and try and figure it out in my head a little bit, and then go like, and then when you see the overhead, you go like, I was way off. Man. It's that whole thing about feeling the elephant. The three blindfolded guys feeling the elephant. It's like that. It's on steroids. But some people were good at it. There was a guy from the States again called Ross Holcomb, and he used to go in and draw them inside and get them pretty accurate. So some people can. They've got everyone, and that's the great thing about the crop circles, right? It brings all these human beings together with like X-Men talents. Some people are good at this and some people are good at that.
And have you noticed any astrological correlations to where whenever they're laid on the ground, is anybody paying attention to the astrology of the time and maybe correlating the types of symbols shown to where the moon phase was in that time of year consistently over the past 10 years? And maybe the same symbol sort of shows up in when the moon is in Pisces, kind of a thing.
If
you brought an astrologer out there, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no. So there's an astrologer. He's an astronomer. He was a professor of maths history at the London School of Economics. I think it was the LSE, London University. Anyway, his name's Dr. Nick Colostrum. He wrote a book called Crop Circles: The Hidden Form, and he knows a lot about astrology. Taught me many things over the years, and he has commented. He writes a guest blog on my website, and he's commented on at the astrological aspects of some crop circles, and the astronomical aspects of some of them, because that brings us to the next category. Right? I've given you 3 categories out of the 5. The 4th category is astronomical symbols. So we see these, like, so for example, you'll see a load of concentric rings, and you'll see symbols for where the planets are, circles for where the planets are in relationship to each other that day. So a crop circle appeared and it showed, our solar system and the meteor and the asteroid belt, all these loads of little varying size circles for the asteroid belt, and then the rings of Venus and Mars and Jupiter and Saturn. And they were all exactly where they were that morning in relation to us. And he pointed that out. And there are several other examples. I can't bring them all to mind, but check out his book, Crop Circles: The Hidden Form. His name's Dr. Nicholas Colostrum, Kolllerstrom. And for your viewer who wants to find out more about that, you can.
I will link it below.
No problem.
Cool. And this is fascinating. So what is the last crop circle that you saw? I'm just curious about your last boots on the ground experience in one, and how'd you feel and what was it?
So I took some Italian friends to a crop circle. Last year, I only went to one crop circle. My friend from Brazil, Daniela, was over, and a filmmaker called Rob Freeman and Mark McNabb. They've got some documentaries on UFO stuff. He's this guy who goes around the world. He's got all this equipment to catch fuzzy lights in the sky. Rob Freeman, that is, and Mark McNabb's his kind of film man. They came over, came to my house and took me to a crop circle and filmed me in the crop circle, talking, interacting and stuff like that. And that was, I can't remember. It was in Hampshire. I can't remember. If I looked at the pictures, I could say it was that one, but I can't tell you where it was now. But that was my only one last year, because I was doing this other stuff, less time in the fields. I've done my time. I've been in over 1,000 crop circles. I think I estimate it's around 1,000 crop circles in my life. So I've done my field work. Year before that, I went with just once with. I spent a few days with some Italian friends from Milan. I spoke at a conference in Milan some years ago and became friends with people after that, and they came over and took them around. Yeah,
that's so cool. Well, it's fascinating. So do you still have the itch to go? Or, I mean, I know you said you've done
Sometimes.
the field work, but do you ever get the feeling that one happened and just drive 70 miles to go see one like you did? Do you get that anymore?
Oh, yeah. Well, I haven't had it for a few years, but got a feeling I'm going to get it this year.
You feel it. This year's wild, man. And I mean, if they're starting on the April 8th, we have this eclipse and all of this crazy stuff is going on right now. So yeah, we're kicking into maybe what's going to be one of the best crop circle demonstrations ever. Who knows?
We never know. We never know. They're every time someone tries to predict them, they change on you.
Yeah. Every time, right? The mowing devil is what it was first reported as, right?
That was in the 1600s. Yeah.
Yes.
Copper plate engraving. That's right. The mowing devil. It was based on a folk story of, this farmer trying to hire somebody and not wanting to pay him the price. So the devil came and mowed the field into a circle in the night. Yeah.
It's fascinating. I love the folklore when it comes to this kind of stuff as well.
Yeah.
Man. Well, we're going to wrap it up here, but before we get to the afterthought, I wanted you just to leave us on a high note, man. Talk to us about your Against the Grain and what you're excited about your new show. How fucking cool is this, man? And congratulations in advance.
After all this time, thanks. In addition to doing the last 2 years of doing these engineering exams and tests and studies and blah, 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 I've built this over the last 4 months, I've built this, I started it about a year ago, really. I built the website Against the Grain, started publishing some written work. I did some audio vlogs and started putting my, videos that I'd made over the years sort of out, and changed the YouTube channel. I had a Against the Grain YouTube channel, which had some content on. I started sort of tidying that up, and I got some banners designed and started to build, And now I'm at the point where, on the 1st of May, I'm going to, all being well, the 1st of May will be the launch date. I've interviewed one guest already. I've got 5 more lined up now for over the next 4 weeks. Really good guests. I've got Scott Onstott, the architect geometer from Victoria, Canada. He made the film Secrets in Plain Sight. If any of your viewers haven't seen that, man, you've got to go and watch it. It's Secrets in Plain Sight. It's free on YouTube. It's 3 hours, right? You can take it in bits. That will blow your mind about this geometry stuff and how they built America. The Freemasons turn up in America, and it's all built to these proportions. In London, this man, he's done the number. Check him out. He runs the Sacred Geometry Academy with a guy called Jeff Fitzpatrick from Ireland. They both run it together. They recently interviewed Robert Edward Grant, who's on Gaia TV, doing all the big work at the moment on Egypt and Leonardo da Vinci. Some of his work is incredible. Yeah. The discoveries that are being made now. Sacred geometry, when I first got to crop circles in 1997, was like, what is that? Now there's people like Robert Grant who are going back to Leonardo da Vinci and going, did you know if you lay all of his pictures over each other, he was a cryptographer. He was leaving messages for us in the form of these, and that's what Robert Grant sort of found. So that's astounding. So I've got Scott coming on. I've got Chrissy Newton. She interviewed Leslie Keane and Ralph Blumenthal over the David Grush revelations on The Debrief. She runs a podcast called The Debrief. She's a PR lady from Toronto, Canada. I've had Richard Vobes. Richard Vobes is a YouTube guy here in the UK. He's not related to crop circles or mysterious stuff. But the reason I had him on is, one, he's big into the farmers, what's going on with the farmers right now, right, all around the world with the protests, because they're trying to basically stop producing food. And that's connected to the concepts of crop circles. I'm very interested in that. And also the man in the last 15 months has been through a massive transformation. And we've watched that unfold over his channel. He's got like 200,000 subscribers now. And he's just gone in 15 months. He's gone on this journey when he decided to go down a road. And he's speaking to MPs in this country now who are trying to bring things to our attention that the government and various organizations don't want us to know. So I wanted to interview him about the spiritual aspects of having your paradigm changed. I've already recorded that one with Richard, right? That's a really good show that's coming. So there's a very famous yoga teacher in Malibu, California called Carly Ray. She runs an organization called Try Yoga. She's got schools and teachers and centers all around the world, Taiwan, in Japan, in China, in India, and she lives in Malibu, California. Absolutely love her. She's the person I met in 2008. She took me to India I spent 3 months in India in her guru's ashram. I got invested as a sannyasin. I stood on stage in front of 10,000 people showing pictures of went to a festival called Navaratri, the goddess festival, and I was showing pictures of the crop circle of the goddess, because there's a lot of goddess stuff in the crop circles. So she's coming on next week on the 4th. And Andy Thomas, who's a crop circle researcher, who's one of my elders, he's been around since the early 90s. He's written a book called The New Heretics. He's written 2 books on crop circles. He's coming on too. So I've got 5 more guests, and I want to get 6 in the bag before I launch, and those are lined up. So it's called Against the Grain, and I'm hoping it's going to be really great.
It's absolutely going to be great, brother. We're so proud of you. It sounds amazing. And again, guys, all the ways linked down below on how to find him, your amazing show. And yes, do that batch release, as we call it, right? You want to get more than one out at a time. I like that. 3 to 5 is what they say, but I like your 6, man. Go for it. You go against the grain on even that. And I love it. Yeah. Well, we love you, brother. Thank you so much. This is outstanding.
My pleasure.
Just want to take a moment and thank that super ultra badass Gary King for coming by and hanging out with us. Love this dude. Love how well-rounded he is. Incredibly cool. Gratitude for this motherfucker for coming by. And also just want to send him the best of luck for his beautiful new show, Against the Grain. All that stuff is going to be linked down in the show description, guys, as well as the frequency theories that he joined us for, which is also fascinating. So definitely check that out if you fancy. Now, repeat here that this Saturday, we do have a Patreon hangout with astrologer Emily Trinkus, and we're going to be talking all things eclipse, all things going on right now that's absolutely fascinating, very, very current and relevant, so definitely sign up to join us for that. We'll get you the link right away if you can get it to me before then, right? Now, I want to also mention here the website, expandingrealitypodcast.com, and that is where you can find all things us. The publishing house is located over there as well, so you can find our journal series on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Thank you, Mary. Now, also, we have an amazing event coming up called our Befriending Bigfoot event. This is to take place May 15th through the 20th in beautiful Blairsville, Georgia there. Tons of speakers, guys. So many cool things happening. Too many cool things to list and talk about, but definitely check out the website /events for more information. Also, just want to mention here that you are all beautiful and amazing, and I want to thank you for your support and for showing up as who you are and for making a difference in this place. It's a challenging motherfucker lately, and kudos on you for sticking it through. So go out into this beautiful place, remain unstoppable, pick up some litter, get out of the left-hand lane, keep your wits about you, and just be good to one another. Thank you for watching, listening, enjoying, and just being super ultra badass. We'll see you next time.